The first section of the article is a historical overview of the Titanic disaster. This section includes statistics on the Titanic and a timeline of the disaster. The next section of the article is a discussion of the material failures and design flaws contributed to the rapid sinking of the Titanic. At the time of her construction, she was the largest moving object ever built, with a weight of more than 46,000 tons, a length of nearly 900 feet, as water rushed into the starboard side of the ship's bow. The ship began to tilt down in front and slightly to the right. The bow section remains mostly intact, although the damaged portion of the hull is covered with a 35-foot-high wall of silt and mud that plowed up when the Titanic hit bottom. So the point of fracture cannot be seen. The stern section is a tangled wreck. As implosions occurred during the descent, due to air trapped within the structure succumbing to the increased water pressure at greater depths, between the two sections is a wide field of debris. By midnight, water in the damaged compartments began to spill over into others, because the compartments were watertight only horizontally, and the walls extended only a few feet above waterline. By 1:20 a.m., water began flooding through anchor chain holes. Around 2 o'clock, as the bow continued submerging, the propellers in the stern were lifted out of the water. Flooding progressed until, at about 2:10, the bow of the ship was underwater and the stern was lifted out of the water almost 45 degrees, because of the tremendous weight of the 3 large propellers in the stern of the ship. The stresses in the ship's midsection increased immensely as the stern was lifted out of the water, at an angle of 45 degrees or more. The stresses in the midsection exceeded the ultimate stresses of the steel, and the steel failed Garsk and others. Stresses at failure were estimated at nearly 15 tons per square inch Gannon. 1995. What survivors of the disaster then described was a loud noise that sounded like breaking china or fallen equipment hill. 1996. This noise can be attributed to the tearing and disintegration of the Titanic's upper structure. By 2:12, with the bow and stern attached by only the inner bottom structure, the stern angled high out of the water. The bow, dangling beneath, continued to fill with water. At 2:18, when the bow reached a weight of about 16,000 tons, it ripped loose from the stern. Free from the weight of the bow, the stern rose again sharply to an almost vertical position, slowly filling with water. The stern began to sink into the water. At 2:20, the stern slid beneath the surface. Meanwhile, the bow had been coasting down at about 13 miles per hour. At 2:29, the bow struck the bottom of the ocean, falling nearly vertical at about 4 miles per hour. The stern crashed into the ocean floor, and a height of more than 25 stories. She was the largest of 3 sister ships owned by the White Star Line division. The Titanic was also equipped with the ultimate in turn-of-the-century design and technology, including 16 major watertight compartments in her lower section that could easily be sealed off in the event of a punctured hull. Because of her many safety features, and a comment by her designer, but she was nearly unsinkable. The Titanic was immediately deemed an unsinkable ship. Gannon, 1995. In the last section, the design changes made to ships, and the safety regulations that have been developed as a result of the Titanic disaster. The passengers included some of the wealthiest and most prestigious people at that time. Captain Edward John Smith, one of the most experienced shipmasters on the Atlantic, was navigating the Titanic. Rogers and others. 1998. On the night of April 14th, although the wireless operators had received several ice warnings from other ships in the area, the Titanic continued to rush through the darkness at nearly full steam. A timeline of the events that followed is shown in Table 1. At 11:35 p.m., the lookouts spotted a massive iceberg, less than a quarter of a mile off the bow of the ship. Immediately, the engines were thrown into reverse, and the rudder turned hard. Because of the tremendous mass of the ship, slowing and turning took an incredible distance, more than that available. At 11:40, without enough distance to alter her course, the Titanic sideswiped the iceberg, damaging nearly 300 feet of the right side of the hull above and below the waterline. The article concludes with a review of the causes and effects of the rapid sinking of the Titanic. In addition, the conclusion provides a future perspective on the limitations of the shipbuilding industry. Historical overview: the Titanic was a White Star Line steamship built in the early 1900s by Harland and Wolff, Ireland. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic commenced her maiden voyage from Southampton, England, to New York, with 2,227 passengers and crew aboard. The damage caused by the collision allowed water to flood 6 of the 16 major watertight compartments. The two pieces of the Titanic lie 2,000 feet apart, pointing in opposite directions beneath 12,500 feet of water.